All right, so what we're going to do is let's open up that file that we worked on last time. And that was, I believe it was final, and then 315. That was the date. Final 315. Let's open up that file. Now, if you don't have it, I'm going to quickly go over what we did. If you don't have it, I'm going to do a short review, and you can catch up. And if you don't have it, then you just want to work along with us in a new Animate file. And that's going to be an HD file. That's high definition character animation file. HD high definition if you're opening a preset template. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. And if you're presenting, usually you present a window, and then it will allow you to present one of the windows. So sometimes I ask you guys to show your work, and all you do is just present now and then a window, and you can present the window where you're showing your work. Now I'm just gonna. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, good, thank you. So what I'm going to do is just review what we did last time, and I'm in scene 3 right now. I'm going to go to scene 1. So the last time we learned about scenes, and we actually went in and we added scenes. Let me just make sure that I'm going to pin this so that, there we go. Okay. So we worked in scenes, and we added scenes, and so what you want to do is go to under the command window, and then go all the way down to scene, and open up the scenes palette. And this is where you have control of all of your scenes. And you can add scenes, you can delete scenes, and you can change the names of scenes. And you can pretty much do almost anything you want to with software referring to scenes. And so if you want to make a new scene, you just click on this little plus button at the bottom, Add Scene. And then if you want to delete a scene, you just click on the scene, and you click on the little trash bin, and that will delete the scene. Pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. And you can also rename scenes by just double-clicking on them and typing whatever you want. But usually I will leave the default names for scenes because they're in an order and they play out like that automatically. Now, if you have to, if you get mixed up, you can rename the scene and you can move them. You can drag them down or up. And all you got to do is click and pull. And the scene will move wherever you want to place it. But honestly, I would leave these alone because I have seen bugs in previous versions of Animate where the scenes don't play correctly. Once you add the scenes, and I would add as many scenes as you need. I know that I asked you last time to count your number of scenes. You can look at your motivated camera list, and you should have a number of scenes. Your picture list, you should have a number of scenes. And you want to put as many scenes as you have in your planning. And then what you do is you look at your motivated camera list, and you figure out the timing for each scene. Now this is a little tricky. You got to do a little bit in order to calculate the time and the timing for your animation. And it's the last thing I want to do when I'm animating. The last thing I want to do is the timing, but you have to do it. And sometimes what I do is I look at the storyboards and I actually count out loud. So my character is jumping into the pond. How many seconds is it going to take? Okay, let's see. 1, he jumps. 2, 3, 4, he splashes. 5 seconds. And then I write that down. That's going to take 5 seconds. I actually count it out in order to estimate. And you're still estimating because it's going to change. You're estimating the time. So you want to have that in the back of your mind when you're making your scenes. Once you make all your scenes, you can actually just click on them once, and you'll start moving through them. And we've already created this, so I'm going to just zoom in. Magnification, fit in window. Remember, we can use the zoom tool, or we can use this up here. Many different ways to zoom in and zoom out. But if you just click on it from scene to scene, you'll you'll actually be editing in that scene. Each scene has its own timeline. Scene 1 is our title. Scene 2 is usually a wide shot, and I actually created a background on scene 2. Scene 3 I numbered, scene 4, scene 5, and scene 6. So what I'd like you to do, if you haven't already, is create a file called final, put today's date, and make the number of scenes that you have. And then save it. We're going to use this. We're going to keep using this file. Then, I want you to go through the scenes one by one and figure out how many seconds that scene lasts. So for the title scene, we figure 1, 2 seconds. And so if the animation is running right now, and you look right down here, at 30 frames per second, 60 frames equals 2 seconds. So we're going to go out to frame 60, and we're going to right mouse click and insert frames. Now, if you haven't set up your mouse for a 3-button mouse, you want to do that. And a lot of people haven't done this. If you haven't done this, you go to the Apple System Preferences, you go to the mouse, and then you just set it up for a 3-button mouse. You want a left mouse click. But if you're on a PC, you don't have to worry because it automatically has a right mouse button. So it's already set up. On the Mac, you have to go in and set it up in the mouse. Once you have that right mouse button, you get these extra flyout menus, and it's so much more, it's easier and a lot faster. And so you're going to insert frames to frame 60. Now you have to do this for every scene. So if you go to scene 2 and you imagine scene 2 is 5 seconds. So if you have a 5-second wide shot, how many frames do you need? It's easy, simple math, 5 times 3, 150. And so then you would have to go out to frame 150, and you would insert frames. And the same thing, right mouse click and insert frame. And then the same thing in scene 3, scene 4, scene 5, and scene 6. And so what I did was, if you notice the numbers, in scene 1, I created a separate layer with scene number, and I used the text tool to add a number. So you can use the text tool, just click on the stage, type the number 1, put it on the scene layer, and go to scene 2, create your layer, and then copy and paste from scene 1 to scene 2. So just go scene 1, select your number. This one's locked. Copy the number, navigate to scene 2, and then just paste in place. Now, it depends on the version of Animate that you're using, how you navigate scenes. So in the version I'm using, it's the latest version. The navigation for the scenes is in the upper left. So you can just click on scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, scene 5. Very easy. In the one that you're using, if it's an earlier version, it's on the right. The one at the school, it's also on the right under the clapboard. So there might be a clapboard up here, or there might be the scenes over here. Either way, you can navigate through your scenes. So most of you have done this already. If you haven't, I'd like you to finish this and create a template for your final animation. Add the number of scenes you're going to need, add the timing, use your picture list, and use your motivated camera shot list. You should have calculated timing in the shot list. And then add frames for your time. So add frames for the time. And actually, if you look up here on the timeline, in the latest version, there's a little 1S, 2S. It shows the seconds. The earlier version doesn't show the seconds, but this one you can see 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second. So you don't even have to do that math. In the earlier version, you do. It doesn't have that. And then add the time to your timelines in each scene, and have a template ready to go. Because what we're going to do is, like, we're working progressively, and we're going to work on some what are called animatics next. Animatics are just hand-drawn images that are placeholders for your motion and your animation. So we're going to need these files to work on the next step in the assignment. So I think hopefully we're all caught up, and we have this final animation with the number of scenes and your timing. But right now I want to shift gears and move forward and do the tutorial that we had planned for today, which is using your model sheets to create your main character. And hopefully everyone has their model sheets. Now, I started this last time, and so I want to show you what I did. I actually made a folder for my character, and that's what I'd suggest you do. So if you see this little icon up here, new folder, you can click on that little icon and it will make a folder. And inside that folder, you can start to make your layers for your character. Now I have all these layers turned off. I'm going to turn off these layers. I'm going to turn on the layers I have in the folder. And you can see the layers I have. I have hair, nose, mouth, eyeballs, eyes, head, ears, and image. The image layer is where you're going to put your drawing. Now let me turn off all these layers except for image. So I actually imported this image. This is a student work. I imported this image into Animate, and I put it on the bottom layer, and then I locked it because I'm going to trace over this image. And I've done that already, as you can see. I've traced this character. But you notice when I'm tracing each individual component as a separate symbol. So the hair is a separate symbol, the nose is a separate symbol, the mouth is a separate symbol, the eyes are separate, the head is separate, the ears are separate. Everything is separate because I put it together, and then I can animate it. So anything, be aware, anything that's going to move, and I would say just make everything separate symbols, because if you have separate symbols, you can always combine them. But if you have something that's already combined, it's harder to separate them. You're going to start doing erasing, and it's tougher. So I would say keep everything separate and start with shapes, and then convert the shapes to symbols. And you'll notice that when you do this, all of your components will be delivered to your library as separate symbols. And you'll be able to use them over and over again, as we mentioned, as instances. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, because I've already done this once, I'm going, and I want to leave this in here because I use this for tutorials. I'm going to go to scene 2. Actually, I'm going to go to scene 3 because I've already got something in here. But let me show you this too. So scene 2, I've created a background. And I've done the same thing with symbols. So I've made trees, I've made a foreground, I've made a midground, and I've made a mountain background. And I also have clouds. And you remember I went over this. The clouds are actually symbols, and then we go into the properties, and then we just go into the alpha. We turn down the alpha, and then we also go into the filters, and we just blur them a little bit to make these clouds. And you don't have to go too crazy if you want. You can, I'm going to turn down the blur, and I'm going to turn up the alpha so you can see them a little better. But it's a pretty neat trick to make some clouds that are seamless and that look pretty good in the background. But now this is a very simplified version of a background, but it works as a placeholder. Again, you can go in later and you can add detail and branches to the trees. You can add bark. You can start to add detail to the mountain. You can make the mountain less geometric. You can add detail to the hills, but it's just a placeholder. It's just working to show that there is a background. Whoops. So I am going to go to scene 3 where I don't have anything. So I'm going to go to scene 3. I'm going to close my scenes window. The only layer I have on scene 3 is my number 3 layer. And that's for this number. I'm going to lock it down. That's just so I know where I'm at. I'm going to lock that layer down. And now I'm going to start to make my main character using that model sheet. So if you don't have that model sheet on your computer, transfer it. Email it to yourself. You can go into the photos in your camera and just email it, or you can send it through Facebook or Google Drive. Or just plug your camera into your computer. It'll transfer over into your Photos app, and then have it ready to import on your computer. In the meantime, while you're doing that, I just want you to be aware that these scenes will play back in order, and I want to do that once. We did this already, but I want to do it again just to remind you. Control, Test, Movie in Animate. There's a little lag on the playback, but it's not like that on my machine. It's just the interface. So now remember, the reason why you're seeing these is because you have time on the timeline. If you don't put any frames on the timeline, you'll see a flashing 3. It'll flash in 1 frame, and that's it. So don't forget to put time on your timeline. If you're seeing flashing numbers, it means you forgot to insert frames. So when you're testing, it will play the scenes in order. Control, Test, Movie, and Animate. Or you can test the scene itself, just the scene. And that's Control, Test, Scene. And you'll just see that single scene play out. So if you have a scene that's, I don't know, like 300 frames, and you just want to test that scene, you can just test the scene. You don't have to test the entire animation. Test, Movie, and Animate. This will play back all of your scenes at your current frame rate. And that's why I put the numbers in, so you can quickly identify the scenes. And you're probably going to have different timing for each scene. So one scene might be shorter, one scene might be longer. And you can also estimate timing. Now remember, in the future, a future assignment, we're going to be working on animatics, where we're going to draw some simple pictures in software. And you don't have to be able to draw, don't be nervous, where we can just tell what's going on in the scene, and we'll be able to estimate that timing. We'll be able to pinpoint that timing from our estimate. and get it pretty close. All right. So let's stop there, and let's start in on our character. We've done this already once. We started the head. We worked on the head of the frog, but we didn't do it with a model sheet. And most of you didn't actually do it with your own character. You did it with one of my characters. I think it was the frog's head. But now we're going to do it with your character. We're going to use the same concepts and the same tools that we used. Excuse me. Once again, to draw. So I'm going to import some of the images that I have, and you should import the images that you have. So let's go like this. Let's add a layer, and you can just click on New Layer, and let's just call it Image, because this will be the image that we're going to import. Image. Now, right now, there's no content, but because I added 60 keyframes, when I add a new, 60 frames, when I add a new, automatically adds those 60 frames to the new layer. So if I already have layers on the timeline out to frame 60 or whatever, it will also, when I add a layer, it will add the same number of frames. Excuse me. And so what we're going to do is we're going to import onto the stage. Now you can choose to import in many different ways. You can import it to the library, but in this case, we're going to go File, Import, Import to Stage. So last time I mentioned that you could work with multiple libraries from different documents. If you have created stuff in another document, you can open the library from that document, and you can add stuff from that document to this document. You can combine documents. It's very easy. You can copy and paste layers, and you can add libraries. So if you do have multiple documents in the end, we can either work together in the classroom, and I'll help you combine them, or I'll do a tutorial where it shows you how to combine them. But to make it easier, I would say use one document for everything from now on. Import to stage. And then you want to navigate to your images. I'm going to add all these, and we'll see what we have. I know I got a bunch. And then just open. And right away, they're going to come in large, really large. So you're probably going to have to zoom out. So I did some sketches, and I'm not exactly sure which one I want to work with yet. I want to do some keyframe animation in the future, and I have some additional sketches that I'm going to show you as we move forward. But I think I want to work with one of these two. This guy will be easier. she'll be harder. So we're going to go with Panda. She's cuter. But goodbye. I got to get rid of her. I'll do her next time. We're going to keep Panda. And so the first thing you might have to do is use the free transform tool and rotate and scale. And remember, if you don't hold the shift key, you're going to end up, nope, I don't want that. That's bad. You want proportionate. You want relative proportion. So shift key, you can scale down proportionate, and then you want to move. You can use the hand tool or the scroll bars or the zoom tool. I use the hand tool at the bottom. Click on that hand tool, and you can move your stage wherever you want it. And then I'll move my image into place. And I'm going to lock down the image right away. Once I get it on the stage, I'm going to click on the little lock button. I lock that image down, and then I'm zoom back in. See what I'm doing with the zoom? I'm clicking and dragging over the area that I want to zoom in on. If I hold down the Alt key and click, I can zoom back out. Now, I'm just going to work, and then I'll deal with the folder after. So after I'm done creating everything, I'll put everything in a folder, and maybe I'll call the folder main character or something like that, or I'll name my Panda. But for right now, I'm just going to work on the main timeline with the layers. I'm not going to create a folder. Just working here. So I'm going to create a new layer. And usually I'll start with the head. So I just type in head. And then I'm going to zoom in on the head. And so remember, you are working with shapes. And then you're going to convert the shapes to what? Symbols, right? We know that. I've done that so many times. But you're not working with any strokes, because the strokes can get confusing, and they're a little different. The underlying technology is a little different. So if you're working with strokes, you have more options. As I said on I think it was the second day, you have capping, and there's a miter, and there's a lot more control. But I think they're a lot harder to use. And it takes a lot more time. I could do a whole class on just Bezier curves and their relation to vector graphics and how you can edit, manipulate, and control them, because there's so much to it. And if you're working in Adobe Illustrator, you're also working with the same type of curve. And in Illustrator, you have more control. So you can actually attach like pixelated graphics to Bezier curves and modify them in that way, so that it's just better off to use shapes. Do not use strokes. Do not use line. Use just shapes. And we'll create our own lines with shapes. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you fill color and you have no stroke. So you see this little stroke color? Make sure it's like a do not enter sign, no stroke. Then this is a bug. So it automatically resets the stroke. I don't know why, but you might have to turn this off again as we go, and you'll see what I mean. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pick a color, and I just choose a fill color. I'm probably going to choose like a gray. I don't want to choose a white, because if I'm using a white stage, I'll get stuck. I won't be able to see it. In this case, I would, because I've got the background image, but I'm still going to choose like a light gray. I choose that color, and then I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to trace over the head. And as you've seen already, there's a lot of different ways to to move this around. And so we can use the selection tool, and we can start to move this shape. And if you look in the library, if you click over here, click on the library tab over to the right, and if you want to, you can expand your library. It's a little tiny arrow over here, collapse and expand. And you'll see you've added a symbol called head. Modify, convert the symbol, add the symbol called head. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn down the transparency on the head. So you can go into properties again. We've done this already, and you can change the transparency. Under alpha. So you can see when you're in your main timeline, you'll be able to see through and see how accurate you are in the end after you start generating the shape. But for right now, we're going to double click on it, and we're going to just start moving it around with the selection tool. Now, once you get a general shape, you can actually edit this shape. So you get a general shape, and you want to go in and use your pen tool. So if you click on the pen tool, you'll see add anchor point, delete anchor point, and convert anchor point. These allow you control over your curves. So let's do this. Let's go up to the selection tool, and let's click on it and hold down. And you'll see under the selection tool is what's called the sub-selection tool. It's the white arrow. So you have your selection tool and you have your sub-selection tool, the white arrow. Let's click on that sub-selection tool. Then let's click on our shape. So you haven't done this yet. Now you're editing the Bezier curve. The curve has anchor points and handles, and that's what those things are called. Those little white things are called anchor points, and you can edit those and change them. And that's where the pen tool comes in. So right now you have curves, and some of them they come to like a point. You can change that and make a perfectly round curve by just clicking on the handles, and it will change the anchor points for you and make them So what I'm going to do for the head for right now is I'm going to go just a little bit smaller than the head I have. So I'm going to go View, Snapping, and I'm going to turn off all that snapping because I don't want it snapping. So I'm going to go Edit Snapping, and I'm going to turn off all this snap align, snap to guide, snap to object, snap to bitmap pixels. What this does is, let me just open that up one more time for you. Come over here. What this does is this allows when you're editing and when you're moving around these Bezier curves or anything else for that matter, it allows for you to align things. So you can line something up. You can line a point up. You can create a symmetrical. You could create your own animated logo. You could do lots of things with the grid, and even with single pixels. It snaps and aligns everything to wherever you want to align it, to pixels, to the guides, to the grids, and just general snapping. In Illustrator, they're called smart guides. They allow you to snap things, move them around, and align them. But I don't want them on right now because I'm drawing, and I don't want to have to try to struggle with it snapping to the grid. So I turn everything off, and I just go, OK. Now when I move things, you'll notice that I don't have that little bit of like, wait a minute, I can't quite get it in place. Now I can get it exactly in place. And what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to set this up for transparency yet. Instead, I'm going to just move it into place and make it a little bit smaller than my current graphic. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if you're struggling, remember, you're using the sub-selection, and you can change and add points with the pen tool. So if you want to add an anchor point, you just use the Add Anchor Point tool, and you click. And you can add an extra point there, and then move it around with the sub-selection tool. If you want to delete a point, you can use the Delete Anchor Point tool, and just click right on that point you added, and it will delete. Then you can also convert an anchor point. So if an anchor point is coming to an angle, and you don't like that angle, you want more of a curve, you can use this one to click on it, hold, and pull, and it will change that into a curve. Now, I'm pretty happy with this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing we did when we worked on the frog. Oops, let's detach that. I'm going to move this aside, and I'm going to create another one by holding down the Alt key, copying, click and drag. So I just took that first shape, held down the Alt key, clicked and dragged, and copied it. And I'm going to scale it down a little bit using the free transform tool. And I'm going to change the fill color. Now look, it's got a stroke already. See, it added the stroke. Turn that thing off. And then change the fill color. And I'm just going to go with like, I'll go with a little bit, I'll go with the white, because we can see the white because of the background. So I'll go with the white. And then scale it down a little bit. And then click and drag right over on top of your shape. And I actually think I have and I have two colors here. I have the white and I have this gray. These are already, oops. Okay, off you. These are already in their default swatches. But if you need to, if you're using custom colors, you can add to the swatches, and we know this already. You can add a swatch to the swatches, and it'll add it down here. If you're using custom colors, you want to add it to the swatches. And that's under Window, Swatches, Add Swatch. Create a new swatch at the bottom based on the color you're using. You definitely want to add those colors because you use them over and over again. And especially when you're drawing like this, you're going to be using it over and over again. So this concept is pretty much what we're going to do for most of the head and face. So I'm going to use another rectangle. Actually, in this case, for the ears, we can use an oval. And I'm already using the fill color for the outer line, but I'm going to alter this just a little bit so it's not so symmetrical. And I'm going to use the selection tool just to change the shape a little bit. Just want to. And then I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. And then I'm going to just duplicate it, rotate it again for this other ear. And I'm just going to scale it down a little bit. And change the shape a little bit with the tool. Now, don't worry so much about this overlapping here because we're going to cut it. We're going to use this other shape to cut it. So let's choose this. I'm going to choose this outline, and we're going to duplicate it. Hold down the Alt key, and then just change the fill color. So when you change the fill color, it acts as like a cutting tool. It's like a scissors. And just overlap it onto the ears, and then just delete what you don't want, and delete your scissors. And then just place your head back on. Oops, I'm sorry. Make sure you get the white on this turn. So shift click both. Shift click the white and the gray, and then just place it on top. And when you place the same color on top, it automatically connects it. And then I kind of want to move this ear a little bit. I'm not liking that. So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to use the sub-selection tool. Click on it, and zoom in a little bit. See what we have here. You can really start to get some fine detail using the Bezier curves. Now this is hard, so don't expect to master this in one sitting. It's hard. And a lot of students struggle with this, and it takes practice. And so if you like doing this stuff, take another class, and we'll do more of it. But you're definitely not going to master this in one sitting. I'm pretty happy with that. And so let's go back to scene 3. And so we have our head. And let's set that aside because we're going to make separate components for everything. So let's press the plus key again to add a new layer. And then let's call this layer, let's call it nose. And then we're looking at this nose here. This is going to be an easy one. We're going to use the oval tool again. Just make sure there's no stroke. You got to turn this off every time. And then pick a color. And I'm going to use a custom color. Like I was saying earlier, I want to use like a light pink like this. But then I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go into my window colors. And I'm going to pick a solid color. But I want to pick a color that's like kind of like a little lighter pink. Yeah, like this. And so I'm going to add this to swatches. So if I use it again, it'll be there. And then I'm just going to close this color. And I'm going to look to see if it's there under window swatches. And you look at the bottom here, there it is. So it'll always be there and it'll always be accessible for you to use over and over again. And so, yeah, I'm going to use this one for the nose. Make sure there's no fill. Just trace right over here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to just shape this a little bit with our tools. I just want to move it down a little bit. And I'm happy with that. And I'm going to convert it to a symbol. Call it nose. Now you can turn down the transparency and you'll be able to overlap these and layer them. But for right now, let's just leave it like this. And we'll just move it into place. And then it looks like his eyes are going to be the most interesting component of his head. And they're probably going to be moving. We're going to probably animate the eyes because he's going to look around. So let's quickly do the mouth. The mouth is pretty easy. We can use a rectangle. And let's just use that same swatch that we used, that gray. And did we add that swatch? If we didn't add it, we got to make sure we add that swatch. So let's do this. I'm going to double click on the head and then just sample it using the eyedropper. We've used that tool already. And then just make sure that you have this saved as a swatch. If it's not a swatch already, save it as a swatch. I'm pretty sure it's the default, but add to swatches. And then we'll make the mouth. Make a new layer, call it mouth. And then I'm going to use a rectangle for this one. And I'm just going to zoom in on it and then use that selection tool again. And then just going to drag the mouth out like this, and then like this. And it's your call as to how you want to shape it. So I want him to have a little bit of a frown because that's the style of this character. But I've probably got to modify these points. So I'm going to go in. And again, this gives you complete control. The sub-selection tool will allow you to move these points around. And it will allow you to move the handles so that you can get a more, the curve is more parallel. You'll be able to create this. And I'm pretty happy with that. And again, I'm going to save it as, oops, you want to make sure you switch back to your selection tool. Save it as a symbol, modify, convert to symbol, mouth. Now, the mouth might not move. We might not even use this at all, but at least we'll have it as a separate symbol in case we decide we want to do something with it. I might scale that down a little bit too. And then eyes. So we've only got a few minutes here. I'm going to do one eye, and then we'll continue next class. For eyes, let's try a little different technique. So let's zoom in on the eye, and let's use the pen tool. Okay, we're going to draw a little bit. Let's make a new layer. Call it eye. Let's call it left eye. So I'm sorry. Let's do the right eye. R underscore EYE, right eye. And then we're going to choose the pen tool. And actually, it won't matter. It won't matter what fill or stroke we use, because we're going to draw and then we're going to get rid of the stroke anyway. So let's use the pen tool and let's just trace around the eye. So let's go like this. Let's go 1 point, 2 points. Oops. Make sure you're on your first keyframe. If you're not, it'll end up adding a keyframe. See how I was on this keyframe 10? I mean this frame 10, it added a keyframe. You don't want to be on that. You want to make sure you're on the first keyframe. And that goes for everything with cutting and pasting too. You want to do the same thing. So the pen tool is a little tricky. If you click and you drag, you're going to get these anchor points, but you can click and you can drag from point to point, and you'll get all these points all over the place. And let me show you this. And then you can adjust these strokes the same way that you adjusted the shapes. But we're going to complete the shapes so we can get rid of strokes. We don't want to work with strokes at all. So let's use the pen tool, and let's just make sure you're on frame 1. Click, drag, and pull. So I want to show you that without the graphic. So I'm going to turn off the image layer for a minute. You don't have to do this, but you can if you want to. You're on the layer. Make sure you're on frame 1. If you're on one of the other frames, it'll mess things up for you, and you'll struggle with the pen tool. Make sure you're on frame 1. And then on frame 1, if you start making curves with the pen tool and they disappear, just keep going like this, and then delete the whole thing that you create. start again. There's a little bit of a bug. That's what I just ran into. But what you want to do is click. You can click once, click a second time, click a third time, click a fourth time, and then hold the mouse and the pen tool over the first anchor point that you made. And you'll see this little circle icon pop up. That means you're going to close this shape, and then click. Now you have a closed shape, and you can fill it with the paint bucket tool. So right below the pen tool, you'll see the paint bucket tool. You can fill that shape. Then use the selection tool, delete your stroke, and you've got your shape, and you can manipulate your shape just like you've been doing all along. You can move it any way you like. So now I'm going to quickly do it with the image. So I turn down the image, I go back to the right eye, I click on the first keyframe. I select the pen tool, I click once, I click and drag and pull. Don't let go. Drag and pull. And you want to point the handle in the direction that you're going. So if you're pointing the handle up like this, it's not going to work. Point that handle in the direction you're going, and you should be good. And then you want to probably go so I think of it like in quadrants, as if I'm splitting it from a center point. And then point again in the direction you're going. That handle should be pointing this way. And then back over to the first. This is very important. You want to go to that first anchor point, click once, and that'll close the shape. And then you use the paint bucket tool, sometimes known as the fill tool, and you fill it. But then you have to go back and delete that stroke because we're not going to use it. The stroke's the tool. Just like we use some of the shapes that's like scissors, we're just going to go double click on the stroke. It will select the entire stroke and delete it. And then we'll have our eye. Now we want to make an outline for the eye too, just like we did for the head. And we're going to make the eyeball, and we're going to make that all separate because we want the eyeballs to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly make this, and then we'll stop. So let's zoom out. We're going to do this just like we did with the head. We're going to hold down the Alt key, duplicate, and then we're going to use the swatch that we used for the outline. So we're going to fill with that dark gray, and then we're just going to overlap. So I'm going to scale this one down with the free transform tool. I'm going to overlap it to make the eye. I just want to see a little bit of that outline. Make sure you're holding the shift key down. There we go. That's pretty good. And I'm going to fill this one with white because this is definitely the center of the eye. And then I'm going to save this as eye. Modify, convert to symbol. Let's call this outer eye. Because we're going to do an eyeball next time. And then zoom out. Turn on your other layers. And drop this eye into place. And so I'm going to select the head itself. I'm going to turn the transparency back up in the properties. And move things around a little bit. I like the nose overlapping a little bit. Just want to move the mouth up. So there's our start. Let's save. And leave it named final, and just put today's date. Because we're going to work on this again next time. Okay, so let's stop. I'm going to stop sharing. And how did you guys make out? I just want to get an idea of where you're at. Were you able to follow along? Pen tool's a little tricky, right? Pen tool is tricky, but it's powerful, right? And we're gonna cover the pen tool again next time, so you're gonna work with it more. Yeah, this never happens. Sorry about that, guys. Pen tool's a little tricky, and we're going to work with it more. So if you got stuck with the pen tool, don't worry. It takes a little bit of a practice, but using these techniques, you can create a pretty decent character. And we're going to learn some more tricks next time, and we're going to continue to finish your character. We're going to make the body of the character, and we're going to make separate components: the forearm, the legs, the upper arm, just like we did with the frog puppet. And then we're going to put them together, and we're going to make a puppet out of him. Now, you don't have to make your character a puppet. Depends on your animation. So some people are going to make puppets. I want you to practice the technique, and I want you to know how to make the puppet, but you don't have to use the puppet in your animation. You can actually just animate with tweens, in-betweens. But I think the puppet's the best way to do it, but it's your call on that. So what I'd like you to do for next time is just make sure you have this document ready to go, your final document with all of your scenes and the timing estimated. Have that ready to go. Can we do that? Okay. Any trouble with making the document and the scenes? Okay. And you started on your character. You got a good start on your main character. Beautiful. Now I'm happy. Thank you. Everybody's with me. Good, good, good. Okay, now I wanted to ask if our guest has any questions for you guys. If we can, we can put on our is she here? Haley, you there?
Yeah, I'm here still.
Hi, Haley.
Hi.
You can ask the students questions if you'd like to now, and they're happy to answer. They'll answer any questions that you might have about the classes, about the department, and about the school in their own experience. So guys, can you turn on your microphones? And Haley, maybe Haley has a couple questions for you. You can ask the entire class, and maybe people can jump in.
Well, I just have a question about if how I should prepare for this course, and if there's any laptop requirements or anything like that I should know of.
That's a good question. Actually, this semester was a little different, right, guys? We had so first of all, we had space limitations, and second of all, there was a lot of students didn't have the software, so we ended up having to require students to purchase it for the class. And hopefully, from what I understand, students were able to purchase it on a monthly basis. Usually, we supply software. And we supply all of your supplies, actually. We give you everything, including art supplies, drawing pads, everything you need, design supplies. You don't have to buy anything. That comes with your tuition. And software. And we have state-of-the-art labs with the latest Mac computers and the latest software. But usually, and I'm not sure what's going to happen for the fall. So from what I hear, it looks like there's vaccines in place. So in the fall, most likely, we'll be back. I hope. I don't know. I can't really say. But if we are back, then you can use the lab computers. But if it's if you're considering design and computer design as a major, they strongly recommend that you purchase a laptop because you're going to use it and you need it. And I remember way back when I was in school, and I started doing computer graphics. The first thing I did was I purchased an Apple computer, and it was like $3,000 back then. And I took a loan out to buy a computer so I could do the work. But now they're a lot cheaper. You can get a decent machine for like under 500 that can run the software. So they do recommend that you purchase a laptop. But really, you can use the lab computers. It's up to you. I've had students go through the entire program using lab computers. So I hope that's a long answer for a short question. What was the second part of the question?
I was just wondering if I should do anything to prepare for my first classes.
I'm going to let Emily jump in because she has a question. Go ahead, Emily.
No, I just want to answer her question because I am a student here. To prepare and for like computer, I would say don't get a Mac. I personally don't think they're very good, at least the laptops, unless you buy like a very expensive one. I would go for like a Windows if you're in like multimedia or arts and doing animation and stuff like that. They're a lot more powerful. They're easier to use. And then pretty much like prepare. Am I back?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I noticed I lost connection.
We didn't hear you after you said like the computers were powerful.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So yeah, I would go for like a Windows computer for sure. They're definitely easier to use than a Mac. I actually purchased a Mac and a PC or a MacBook. I got rid of my MacBook and stuck with the PC. So that's what I have to add.
Thank you.
Harold, you're muted.
Thank you. I agree with Emily 100%. I think that I actually had both myself, and I think that the Mac it's a pain. It's problem after problem after problem. I actually had to bring mine in because the entire keyboard, the battery exploded, and the keyboard just came right up like it was terrible, and that's an expensive fix. The Apples are really expensive too, and you can get the same thing in a PC for about a quarter of the price. But we don't have PCs in the lab, so we have Macs in the lab, and we did originally have PCs in the lab, and fortunately the PCs and the Macs are cross-compatible, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem with software. But I'd recommend a PC also. It's easier to use. And as far as practice for preparing for the classes, maybe if you haven't used software before, you jump into the software and just familiarize yourself with the software, with Animate, with Adobe Photoshop, with Adobe Illustrator, with InDesign, and just familiarize yourself with the layout if you haven't done that already. And then for the studio classes, they're just so much fun. It's a lot of just experiential learning, and working with charcoal and working with pencils and working with rulers and paper, and it's all that very visceral. It's hands-on kind of work, which I really enjoy myself. And so I'd say if you've done any kind of drawing or anything like that in the past, maybe practice a little bit of your drawing in a sketchbook or something like that. And that way, when you come to class, maybe you can show some of your stuff. I did this before, I started attending. I did this. I always like to, see my students' influences. And if they've worked on anything outside of class, or, before they came to the college, I like to show that off and know what you like and know what you're interested in. So something like that might help. You guys, can you jump in? Anything that might help to prepare? Think about when you came in. What would have been better for you if you had prepared something and you've been something like, particularly people that are in the program, but anyone can jump in. Any program, it doesn't matter. What do you think? What would have helped you to prepare?
I just wanted to say, like, I came into the program without having used any of the software. So it wasn't as hard as you would think to jump into it, just so you don't freak yourself out and feel like you have to learn everything about a program. I think something that really helped me out was I really enjoyed drawing. So practicing like physically drawing and things like that, and structure, color theory, things like that, they transfer to online. So that helps a lot. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Good answer. That's a good answer. Thanks, Nadia. Definitely, even in my classes when I'm teaching, like for instance, I went over the pen tool today. And there are some students that were like, yeah, I'm glad you did that. Now I can move forward. I'm ready. I can go. I've been practicing. And there are other students that are saying, I didn't quite get the pen tool. I'm stuck. And that's okay because I go over it again. I'm going to go over it again for students that were stuck. And then students that get it, they go forward. They're moving. So you kind of, I have like a way of teaching the advanced and the beginner. And so what Nadia said was focusing on things that you want to practice. That's great too. So she's practicing drawing, and she's probably going to take that same skill and practice it in software. She's drawing in software. My focus is drawing in the software. And so that's what she's focusing on. And when I see that in a student, I help them to hone that skill. And I help them with that practice. So that's a really good answer, yeah. Anyone else from maybe another program, how you could have prepared, how you could have better been prepared for the classes? Or even from our program, would be great from our program, but anyone can jump in.
I just like to say that I'm not from this program. I'm actually a business major. I'm marketing. So this class does go hand in hand with marketing because digital marketing is huge in today's world. But I just want to say I almost wish I did take this program because I love it. I love this class a lot, and yeah, that's really all I got to say.
Minor.
Yeah.
That's what I can say. We offer a minor. Look at a minor, and if you're going to do a minor, you want to come visit me, set up an appointment, and I'll focus the classes so that they complement the marketing major. We have a lot of classes that complement marketing and advertising, and some of my classes, I actually worked in the field for a while. I've done marketing, and I've done advertising, and so I'm very familiar with the professional aspects of those disciplines. And so some of the classes are really advertising, visual advertising, magazine ads, design for advertising, and creativity for advertising. So anyone that's doing business, marketing, communications, anything like that, these two programs go hand in hand. And as a matter of fact, I know a number of my students, my graduates, work in those fields. They work in marketing, they work in advertising, they work in graphic design, they work in communications. So it's sort of, in some ways you could say it's like a jack of all trades when it comes to business, marketing, art, design, advertising. You're learning a lot of that stuff and how to apply, these skills, these art skills that you might have or that you gain in the program, how to apply them to the professional world. That's a good comment, Liam. Thank you. Excellent comment. And then you consider a minor, okay? Come see me. Anyone else? Any ways that could have better prepared you? All right. Haley, any other questions? We can help you with anything else.
No, all my questions were answered and helped me a lot with knowing about the business major being hand in hand. So
Absolutely, and there are a lot of students that come in from marketing and from business and from communications, and they take classes in our program because they go hand in hand. But we're particular about computer graphics, multimedia, graphic design, which is also a quite lucrative field right now. And you can open up the newspaper or look at any job site, and you'll see thousands of positions for people that have skills in computer graphics, which also relates to social media, and which also relates to graphic design. And again, it starts to become like this tree where it all stems from. I honestly think it stems from creativity and from the courses that we offer here in the arts. It's visual and it's also a mindset. It's a way of thinking. That creative spark, that idea generation is so important. Even for my illustrators and my artists that are super skilled with drawing, I help them to hone that skill where they're able to come up with something original. And when they're illustrating something that is unique. So important, so very important, I think. But anyway, I'm going to conclude this session. But wait, guys, if you can, please don't forget, finish this document. Make sure you have your scenes in place. Make sure you do your timing for each scene. And then we're going to do the animatics. So we're going to finish this character, finish your main character. We'll do the body. We'll put them together, and we'll start to construct the puppet, and then we'll do the animatic, and we'll be able to see the entire animation. And then we'll be able to estimate the timing. So I want to conclude today's class. I want to thank you guys for having the patience to sit through the tutorial. I'm going to upload the tutorial to the server so you can refer back to it. If you want to work on it outside of class, you can. And that's it for today. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for visiting us, Haley.